Good morning, my people. My name is Chief Strongblood. I am St. Vincent and the Grenadines' favorite Moses' son. I am the diaspora chosen, my people. I have heard and seen several people on Facebook question Kenton Chance's ability as a journalist. We know he went to Taiwan, course over in Taiwan. I don't know what the nature of the course was, but he was in Taiwan and he was learning how to be a journalist. He came back to St. Vincent and the Grenadines and he was given an opportunity by the Searchlight newspaper. He couldn't cut it in the Searchlight newspaper and Miss Keyser had to let him go. I also question his ability as a journalist. I read what he writes only for content, because that is all you're supposed to get from Kenton Chance is content. What happened? And that's it. Take a look at this video. Kenton Chance is doing a story, but he's making himself the source of the story. As a journalist, when you are dealing with a story, you are never the source of your story.
If you want a living example of sea level rise, here in Layou, it is very obvious, because there were houses along this entire area of Layou, but over the course of that time, and I'm 44 years old, the sea has come up and it compromised all of these houses, and I think sometime around 2008 or thereabout. Yeah, correct. And if I don't, I'll put it on the screen. The government had to build this sea defense here in Layou. So where we used to have sandy beach right along the coast here in Layou, there's now a concrete sea defense, and some of the houses that used to be along this area, they're not no longer there. Has taken so much of the land. So the only place left in Layou to actually sea bathe is probably here in Corner Bay, but I guess it's very. And then on the other end of the beach, which is Jackson Bay. And there was some controversy about 2 years ago when there was a proposal to build a jetty over there, and the people protested, and that the government did not approve that application by a private person to erect a jetty.
Kenton Chance is doing a story, but he's making himself the source of the story. As a journalist, when you are dealing with a story, you are never the source of your story. You use your knowledge about the situation that you're dealing with to point your readers or your listeners to a conclusion. Meaning, if you are covering a story, you don't go and do a story and use yourself as a source of the information. What you do, you use your knowledge about what used to happen, and from your knowledge of what was happening there, you'll get people who knows about the situation and can confirm what you know. So when you're doing a story, you have independent source apart from yourself. You never become a part of the story that you're writing. Here, Kenton Chance is doing a story about global warming and the rising of the tides. First of all, let us understand what Kenton Chance said and what he showed. Put both of them into context and come to a conclusion as to what we understand Kenton Chance to have meant. He started a video from Corner Bay in Layou, and he panned the camera down to the new seawall, and he showed you the length of the seawall, and he said, if you want an example of how climate change is affecting a place, Layou is a perfect example. He further said when he was a child, he could remember well that there were houses all along this beach. When he spoke of the houses being along the beach, his video was now showing the length of the seawall. What I personally understand Kenton Chance to mean is that there were houses on the southern side of the road along Bay Street in Layu, all along the eastern side of the pier where the seawall now occupies. I am saying that this is not so. And he's making an allegation that in Layu, along the main road that going into Layu, there were houses on the southern part of the street next to the beach. And in this, he is using his childhood memory as the main source of information as it relates to the story. But Kenton Chance, by the virtue of his bald head, would never have any proper recollection of his childhood memories, and it will be accurate. I was born in 1966. I have memory of that beach from 1969. As soon as I get off of the hill, above the old police station, my aunt, Ina Palmer, lived right there. That is Vie Sketcher Palmer's mother. It was a custom of my mother to travel to Layu with me as a child in 1969-70 that I could remember. And my mother was fascinated by the fact that Miss Palmer lived so close to the beach that all she had to do is walk across the street and she's on the beach. My mother and Ina Palmer, their mother, would always put on their swimsuit and just walk across the street with me. And the three of us will go on the beach. They will hang out, sand, and I will play on the small wave that breaking while they watch me and have their conversations. This was a regular phenomenon for my mother and Veer's mother. When I start going to primary school, when the summer holiday come around, I have to spend at least 1 week with Miss Palmer. I was born in 1966. That means I am 58 years old. I am 14 years older than Kenton Chance. I am going to disprove this claim from showing you old photographs from the 1930s, the 1940s, the 1970s, and probably the 1980s, which show the Layu Bay east of the pier. Within St. Vincent and the Grenadines' history, there was only one permanent structure that occupied the place where the sea defense wall in Layu now occupies. That one building was a Esso gas station, which was located in front of the house that Dillinger lived in. And that Esso gas station was run by Dillinger. That Esso gas station, like most Esso gas stations in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, closed their doors only after Trinidad and Tobago discovered that they had oil. And they followed the Shell company and began to ship automotive petrol products and cooking products to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. There were not enough market share available to ensure that Texaco, Esso, and Shell operated in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and remained profitable. It is so Esso, which is a distributor of Exxon Valdez company, stopped shipping petrol to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and as a result, those petrol stations closed their doors because their supplier no longer supplied St. Vincent and the Grenadines with automobile fuel and products. This is a photograph of the Layu Bay Street, the beach from 1930s. If you notice, there is no building that occupies where the area of the sea defense wall now occupies. If you notice, Layu Bay had a pier even in the 1930s and 40s. However, the pier was further down in the Jackson Bay area. Let me bring you the first point to dispel Kenton Chance's claim that sea defense had to be built because of global warming, causing the tide in this area to rise. The Layu Bay consists of only one beach. But there were three names given to three areas of that one bay. The name Corner Bay was given to the easternmost side of the bay because of its location. If my memory serves me right, Jackson Bay was given to that part of the beach on the western side of the pier because of the people who owned the land immediately in front of the bay. And that portion of the beach west of Corner Bay and stretched down to the pier was called Layou Bay. It was one bay, one long beach with three names that identified three sections of the beach. The question I would like Kenton Chance to answer here is, how is it possible that global warming is going to see the sea rise along a bay which probably stretches about 1.5 miles or thereabout, and yet only the eastern part of the bay was affected? That is not possible. There was a logical reason that was responsible for the condition that existed in Layou Bay, and I'm speaking that section of the bay east of the pier goes straight up to Corner Bay. And I will take the opportunity to explain what happened there in this video also. 1930s photograph. If you notice very carefully, there is no houses or buildings on the eastern side of the pier, but there are buildings on the western side of the pier on the southern side of the road. 1940s photographs, same thing happening here. 1970s photographs, same thing happening here. There is a big unidentified mass right here. That is probably where the Esso gas station was located. I'm not sure, but I'm suspecting that is where it was located. And I think sometime later, that property was converted into becoming a Layou vegetable market, if my memory serves me right. So we have viewed the Layou waterfront or Bay Street, and we have reviewed photos from the 1930s, the 1940s, the 1960s, and the early 1970s. And the evidence is clear. There were no houses on the southern side of the road on the eastern side of the pier, Layou Bay. Let us take a look at Corner Bay, and let me make it clear here that these houses are the same houses that were there since the 1970s. Of course, repairs were done to these houses as needed, but none of these houses was compromised because of the rising tide. These two houses were on the bank on the southern side of the road. They overlooked the beach. They were the last houses on the southern side of the road entering Layou, and they were the first houses on the southern side of the road leaving Layou going up the hill. The house at the end was immediately in front of the Layou police station. I wanted to pay attention to the picture of the house on the most eastern side of the road. If you notice, that premises borders on the side of the street, which will put the front door of that house in the street. On the issue of why the seawall have to be built, I will take this opportunity to discuss with you what led to the condition that developed that saw the need for the sea defense wall to be constructed at Layou Bay. Here is another picture of the same area, but the only thing, this picture has a car in it. If you pay close attention to the car, you will notice that this is a very small car. However, look at the position of the car in the road and look at the amount of space that remained. The Layou road was so narrow, it was unable to allow two small cars to pass each other simultaneously on that road. However, this road was used for the movement of passengers and cargo using big buses between Kingston and North Leeward and all of the villages and towns in between. it was totally impossible for two cars of this size to pass each other simultaneously on the Layou Road. And it created an even bigger problem when two buses have to pass each other. A complicated cooperative system had to be developed between the drivers of those buses and the other road users. You may be asking yourself, what does this have to do with the condition that arose that led to the construction of the seawall? It have everything to do with it. In the development of Layou, it saw permanent structures being constructed very close to the road, even bordering the road, as it is in the Layou waterfront or Layou Harbour. As you see in this picture, there is no sidewalk on either side of this road. This is a recurring problem in the tongue of Layou. In 1972 or thereabout, the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines take up a project to widen the road that runs alongside the Layou Bay. And because they were all permanent structures on the northern side, the only alternative for widening the road, they had to encroach upon the beach. This project moved southward several feet onto the Layou shoreline, cutting the sandy beach in half. And in order to ensure that the sea does not reclaim the land, the road had to be raised and a retaining wall had to be put in order to ensure the sea does not reclaim that area of land that was refurbished to accommodate two-way vehicular traffic along the Layou Bay Road. This is a video of a healthy coastline. It has enough space going forward for the breaking of the wave to expand to the full power of the push of the sea. Each wave bathes the shoreline, spanning to the full extent of the push of the sea, and then slowly retracts back into the sea. In the final stage of the retraction process, the waves soaks into the sand and makes its way back to the sea. This process caused millions of sand particles that was embedded in the water to be deposited upon the shore, while the water from the waves slowly retracts into the sea. What will happen if you stop the wave from properly bathing the shore, exhausting the full force of the push of the sea, and then go through the process of slowly retracting into the sea? If this natural process is interrupted, the waves will return to the sea with great force. Instead of depositing sand on the seashore, when the waves slowly retract, because it is now coming back with greater force, it will begin to remove the sand that accumulates on the seashore. This is what happened at Layou Bay, east of the pier. The road expansion project took up a large portion of the beach and in so altered the natural course of the waves, causing the wave to return to the sea with greater force, stripping the coastline of the sand. And when there were a high tide, a tropical storm, a tropical depression, or a hurricane, the waves beat vigorously against the retaining wall, which often compromised the retaining wall and caused damage to the road system in the Layou waterfront. This problem was fixed with the erection of the sea defense wall that now occupies Layou Bay. It is important to note that the problem that arose in the Layou Bay area, even with the monstrosity of a construction that was placed there, can still be reversed. So here we have it. Kenton Chance was wrong. Kenton Chance refused or failed to follow professional journalistic guidelines in the pursuit of the truth, and in doing so he presented false information to the local, regional and international community. When a journalist discovered that he made an error, provide false information whether intentionally or not, journalistic integrity says that that journalist should publish a retraction if it is within his or her power, remove the story that was debunked. Let us see if Kenton is a real journalist. Let us see if he is going to uphold the journalistic integrity by removing this story from his page and publishing a retraction. My name is Chief Strongblood. I am St. Vincent and the Grenadines' favorite motivated son. I am the diaspora, which is my